You know the feeling. It's still dark outside. It's early. You think everybody in the house is still asleep, so you get up and you sneak down the hallway, maybe down the steps in your pajamas, trying to be quiet. You feel the floor under your feet, maybe the carpet, and you try to stay as silent as possible and keep everyone else asleep, because for the next few hours, the TV belongs to you. You pour your cereal, you keep the volume turned down low, and you settle in for the only stretch of time in the entire week that is completely, entirely, and gloriously yours. No school, no church clothes this morning, no chores, no adults deciding what happens next. It's Saturday morning. And if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you just felt that Saturday morning, because that wasn't about the television programming, though that was a big thing. It was a country inside the weekend, a sovereign nation of children, millions strong and growing, all awake before their parents, all eating the same cereals, all watching the same shows at the same time. But here's the thing they never told us. They never warned us, and we never saw coming. It was all going to end. And it ended quickly, with no announcement, no big fanfare, no ceremony or funeral. One of the most important, universally shared rituals in all of American history just stopped existing. And an entire generation of us never got a chance to say goodbye, because we didn't know that we were living in the last of it. So today, we are going to take a look back, and we are going to say goodbye properly to the great Saturday mornings and Saturdays, for all they were, all they meant, and all that we love. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. Here's the thing about Saturday morning. It was the only moment in time that was ours when we were kids. I mean, I love the Friday night ritual. I loved Friday Night Vibes. I did a whole video on it. But that was shared. It was shared with not only other kids, but teenagers and adults, all different kinds of Fridays. But that Saturday morning, that was sacred. That was ours. And I don't think we ever fully appreciated how strange and precious that actually was. Think about a kid on a weekend in 1985. First, think about the kid's week in 1985. Monday through Friday, well, that belonged to school, it belonged to homework, it belonged to chores. Sunday belonged to church and family time and getting ready for Monday, which is why I still don't like Sunday afternoons. Weekend nights were different depending on what you were doing. Parents had plans. You had to do other things. Maybe you were in sports, whatever it was. Maybe you just had to turn the TV over to the adults. But Saturday morning was the one time slot in America in the whole week that the culture just ceded itself completely to kids. The networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, local networks programmed 4 and 5 hour blocks of entertainment directly for us. The advertisers built an entire economy around us. The cereal commercials, the toy commercials, Christmas commercials, Halloween commercials, movie trailers, cut for kids, different cuts for that time period. For those few hours, the most powerful broadcasting apparatus on earth pointed itself directly at like 8-year-olds. That's pretty awesome. And because there were only a few TV networks, really, there was no on-demand, there was no streaming, there was no recording for most of us. Every kid in America was watching the same things at the same time, and that was the purest form of monoculture that we have experienced And the entire monoculture of the era at that age group was all experiencing it at the same time. It was purer than prime time, purer than movies in many ways, because there weren't even adults in the room most of the time. We didn't share this or have to share this with everyone else. Millions of us Flintstones kids coming together coast to coast. The funny thing about this, though, is this time is not something we invented. It was kind of inherited, because that inheritance came first in the forms of like Looney Tunes, Bugs, Daffy, Wile E. Coyote, cartoons made in the 40s for movie theaters, handed down to Saturday mornings like heirlooms. We were the third generation, maybe, to get those, and we were still laughing at the anvil every time it dropped. Scooby-Doo, my favorite of all time, solving the same mystery basically every single week for decades, and we never once got tired of it, because the mystery was never the point. The gang was the point. The adventure was the point. The van was the point. Hanging out and unmasking the bad guy. The rituals never got old. Then you had Super Friends, giving an entire generation the first Justice League, the Flintstones, and the Jetsons, past and present, past and future, really, all somehow still portraying the same kind of suburban family. Meet George Jetson, then you've got the Flintstones song. You got the Smurfs taking over the 80s one small blue hour at a time. And then the revolution came. The 80s toys explosion from the cartoons. Transformers, more than meets the eye. G.I. Joe, a real American hero. He-Man, and the Masters of the Universe. And then, of course, Thundercats. Oh, yes, I can still do all that. I can hear all that because of that Saturday morning time slot, that ritual that is so ingrained in us. They were basically half-hour toy commercials in a lot of ways, particularly like Transformers and G.I. Joe. We knew it, though. Even then, you kind of knew. You watched the cartoon, you wanted the toys. So it didn't really matter to us one bit, though, because they were also our mythology, something that is very important. They taught us good and evil, honor and cowardice. They had teams and loyalty, the good side, the bad side, sacrifice, all of that delivered in a 22-minute dose of your favorite show with a moral at the end. And knowing is half the battle. Or you would have He-Man standing there telling you. The people who dismiss those shows as merchandising never set cross-legged in the floor with their cereal, while Optimus Prime taught us about what it meant to be leaders and what the leadership cost was. Then later came DuckTales and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because every show had a great cereal ecosystem running through it. It all had its own food. I mean, Ninja Turtles had pizza. If you didn't have it the night before, it set you up to want pizza later. But you were eating that cereal and enjoying that block of time, because that block of time, the structure of it itself, was something that was so important to this, and we didn't really appreciate it until it was gone, because it's what gave the morning its shape. It's what forced us to share this together. When the early stuff came on, it built towards the headliners, and then they wound down towards noon, because at noon you knew that dial was going to change, and it was going to be sports or news or something that your dad wanted to watch that maybe you didn't quite want to watch yet. And you knew what that meant. It meant that the borders, the country of childhood, they were closed until next week, because the morning was finite. It wasn't going to last forever. And that rarity, that short amount of time, made it matter even more. Now for me, after cartoons, there was really two versions of Saturdays, but there was no version of Saturday that didn't start with Saturday morning cartoons. But I'm going to tell you about both of my versions of Saturdays, because I imagine that all of you have some sort of version of these Saturdays. The first one was at home. My brother and I, we would get up, we would go watch the cartoons. My dad would usually be awake because he woke up early. Later, my stepdad was the same way. He woke up early. That's how it was. They were just always awake making coffee. So no matter how early you got up, somebody was awake, no matter how sneaky you were. And while we poured our cereal, my mom would come in and sit down with us, particularly when we were younger, very young, every week, because Scooby-Doo was hers too. She loves Scooby-Doo, still loves Scooby-Doo. That's where my love came from. And that was the one that she would watch with us before my brother and I ran the rest of the morning ourselves. Super Friends, Transformers, Flintstones, Jetsons, although she loved the Jetsons and Flintstones too. And then the Smurfs and Thundercats and all that. So think about that detail though for just a second, because I didn't understand really what that was until I was grown, and really didn't put a lot of thought in it until I started thinking about this video. My mother sat down for Scooby-Doo with us, a show she had watched when she was young. Saturday morning was already a multi-generational thing by the time it got to us. We were sharing it backwards in time and forwards in time. The cartoons would end, and then Saturday would shift gears. Now for me, that meant youth league football late morning, afternoon, Taco Bell or Pizza Hut after the game, maybe a stop at the video store if we hadn't gone on Friday night. And Saturday also meant Georgia Bulldogs games on the radio or TV by evening. And late Saturday night meant Elvira or Joe Bob Briggs, but mainly Elvira or Rhonda Shear's Up All Night, the forbidden sort of bookend to the day that started with the Smurfs and ended with Elvira or Rhonda Shear's Up All Night. That wasn't a day. It was an entire arc. The cartoons were just its sunrise. And then the second one, the second kind of Saturday, was the one at my grandparents' farm, because this is the one that started with my nanny, my great-grandmother's homemade biscuits, because she would make a full farmhouse-style breakfast every single morning, including Saturday, the kind that just really does not exist anymore. So before my uncle, my brother, and I planted ourselves in front of cartoons, my uncle is 8 years older than me, and here's what we would do, and nobody ever gives credit for. When the cartoons ended, we didn't stop. We went outside and we became the cartoons. We played war with, like G.I. Joe. In this case, we used dirt clods, pecans from the ground that we picked up from the tree as ammunition to throw at each other. We explored barns. We worked ourselves into imagined adventures, convinced ourselves that old outbuildings and barns were haunted and had to go in and explore them. The cartoons then, they really weren't passive entertainment to us. They were the morning's sort of setup for the rest of the day. Television launched you out the door instead of holding you on the couch. And if we'd worked on the farm that day for my great-grandfather, he would give us 2 rewards on a Saturday. Sometimes he'd give us a little bit of money, just enough to walk down to the store called Carl's Superette, and it would be just barely enough to buy a Coca-Cola and some kind of candy bar. And sometimes, and this is the one that I would give almost anything to go back in time and do just one more time. He would give us, it'd be my brother, my uncle and I, my cousin, my aunt would be there too, because she's only like 7 years older than me. He would allow us to go out into his field and each of us pick our own watermelon. And we'd sit outside under the pecan trees and the live oaks on these stone benches that were out there in between the barns and everything. And we would sit there and crack those watermelons open, and we each had an entire watermelon to eat and make a mess with, making the biggest mess you've ever seen kids make. And then we could take our leftovers and throw them over into the hog pen when they were done. But then the night would always end the same way. No matter what that reward was, the night always ended the same way. Usually the Braves game, if it was not football season, the Braves game would be on TBS. And then late night, here would come Elvira's horror movie or Rhonda Shear's Up All Night, and my uncle doing his dead level best to terrify us all with ghost stories, creepy songs he would sing, horror comics that he would pass around in the lamplight of his attic room at the farmhouse, and we would spook ourselves out completely and love every single second of it. And that was Saturday. Cartoons at sunrise, ghosts at midnight, and an entire self-contained world in between. And every piece of it, every single piece of it, has either vanished or been scattered to the wind. But it started every week in front of our television, and the cartoons were the doorway. So the question is, what happened? Because for the most part, people don't actually know what happened. Saturday morning didn't die of natural causes, so to speak, and it didn't really disappear all at once. It was dismantled piece by piece over about 15 or 20 years by forces that had nothing to do with whether or not us kids loved those Saturdays. So in about 1990, the federal regulations began requiring networks to air educational programming for children. And I mean, those might have been well-intentioned rules, but it made the pure entertainment blocks harder and less profitable to program. At the same time, another big key, cable arrived in a big way. Now, it had been around for a while, but now it really got there in a big way in the early 90s with 24/7 kids channels, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney. And the paradox that nobody saw coming about that is that infinite cartoon availability killed the Saturday morning ritual. When animation, when cartoons, when all of that was available every hour of every day, Saturday morning suddenly wasn't special. It was just another morning. Then the networks started doing the math, and the math never ends well usually. News programming and sports shows made more advertising money from adults than cartoons made from kids. So one by one, the blocks shrank, moved, got replaced. The last real Saturday morning cartoon blocks limped into around the 2000s, early 2000s, and then just quietly expired and disappeared. They were the very last vestiges, gone with almost no press coverage at all. So this end had no finale, no farewell special, no last episode where characters waved goodbye. A 50-plus year institution, one that 3 generations at least of American children shared, just wasn't there one Saturday. It was just gone. It was there and then not there. And the kids who would have mourned it had all grown up, and the kids who came after never knew what they had missed. And that is really sad. That is the cruelest way for something to end. Not with a bang, not with a big announcement, not with a big going out with your boots on, but going out with absolutely nobody noticing. Now, here is the part again where I'm supposed to be all doom and gloom and tell you that cartoons were all better back then and nothing is good now. And honestly, most were. A lot of cartoons were better overall. They had better stories. They had better messages. They had heroes' journeys. They had all of that stuff in them. But that's not really the argument here, because it's never really been the argument. Because here's the truth. Kids today have access to all of these. At the same time, animation with higher production values than we ever had, quality better than anything we ever dreamed of, every episode of everything on demand forever, anytime they want, by any measure of content. They are rich beyond imagination. And they have absolutely nothing like Saturday morning. Because what we lost was never really the cartoons. We lost the appointment that we shared together, the scheduled, shared, finite thing. The knowing that it was coming all week, the looking forward to it, the anticipation that Tuesday's misery at school had a countdown clock on it. It was counting down to Saturday morning, the getting up early, not because you had to, but because you couldn't wait, because you wanted to. It's a very different early morning call. And the fact that it ended at noon, which meant that it was scarce, also meant that it was very, very precious. And the fact that every kid you knew, including yourself and everyone you came in contact with in the country, was inside the same morning at the same time. That is something that the Infinite Scroll can never give you. The Infinite Scroll can give every kid every cartoon ever made. It can do that. It cannot give those kids a country where 50 million kids that only existed between 7 a.m. and noon on Saturday were all together at once, sharing the same things. It cannot give them the feeling of borders and a structure, and that the time is completely theirs and nobody else's, beginning and end, shared with everyone and supervised by no one. The truth is, abundance and availability killed the appointment. It killed the importance. And the appointment was the whole thing. Somewhere out there this morning, a kid still got up before his parents. He ran down the hallway, poured his own cereal, opened an app alone, and went into a feed built just for him. It never begins and it never ends, and it's shared by no one. He has everything we had times 1,000, times 10,000, except the one thing that made it all matter. So here's to a country that we all grew up in, the one that existed for 5 hours a week, coast to coast, in pajamas with a bowl of cereal, to Scooby and the gang solving it one more time, to Optimus and Lion-O and Super Friends, to the moms who sat down for that one show that was theirs too, to the biscuits and the watermelons and the barns that were definitely haunted, to the uncles with ghost stories, and to the brothers that shared the adventure, and the dads that watched it all happen, and to every kid who ever felt that specific Friday night feeling, not of the weekend starting, but of knowing what was waiting in the morning. The cartoons are still out there, every one of them streaming forever. It's the morning that's gone, but it is forever in our memories. So drop in the comments your Saturday morning lineup, your Saturday ritual, and if anyone out there wants to sit down with you and watch it and tell me about your mom and your Scooby-Doo, your dad and your G.I. Joe, let me know, because I think we all shared it together. We're Flintstones kids, 10 million strong and growing. And that's what I got for you this time. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And if you would like to help a little bit more, you can join my Patreon. Over there, you get extra members videos, behind the scenes looks at my filmmaking, all of that kind of stuff, deep dives into physical media and even more content. And of course, your name and lights on every single video. And it all helps the channel, and I really do appreciate it. But until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. I know.